A $70,000 assignment on your first deal, cold calling.
I would say the first 3 to 4 weeks I was on cloud nine, but now I'm kind of getting to that point as well where it's like, well, what are the next steps?
Excited to talk with you. You're in the Chicago market, correct?
Yes, I am. And thank you so much. It's a huge honor to be here.
Yeah, great. And we've got a handful of people on. I don't know how many, 39 or 40. But would love to hear about your success. You did a deal that was a pretty big deal as far as assignment goes. And you're brand new, got started this year, right, in wholesale real estate. So tell us a little bit about your start and your journey so far.
Okay, sure. And yes, thanks again for having me. This is really great. But yeah, so I guess I kind of started getting interested in real estate back in 2021. I have a job where I'm on the road going to people's homes. So I would just listen to YouTube all day long. And I was listening to a lot of Bigger Pockets starting out. And then, so basically my first kind of venture into real estate is I did purchase a 2-flat here in Chicago when I was doing the house hack. That was the end of 2021. Still listening to Bigger Pockets a lot and, really wanted to get into more investing. But I realized, pretty quickly that I didn't have enough money to buy another rental property, because that would be the 25% down on the next one, where I'd only put 3.5% down on the first one. So kind of came up against a roadblock. And so I just, continued listening to a lot of YouTubers and basically came across your channel, Flipping Mastery. And then I kind of just got really sucked in. So I pretty much knew right away, like, I don't know, maybe it was the way you were presenting or teaching or the ideas that you were putting out. It just really clicked. So that was, I guess that would have been, early 2022, or probably the middle of 2022, but basically listened to you probably for 4 to 6 months before I really took any action. Mm-hmm. And then around Thanksgiving of last year, I started basically reaching out to agents, trying to do the on-market method, and wasn't having much success. I really wasn't putting the effort into it that I should have been, but that was kind of how I first got started with the wholesaling idea, and kind of started dabbling there.
Gotcha. Yeah, as soon as you said Bigger Pockets, I thought, oh, that means he's going to be trying to buy and hold, because that's
yep.
Their big thing is like, how to own assets and keep them as rentals and all of that. So, okay. So then when you started, when wholesaling resonated with you, one of the fastest entries into wholesaling is with agents because it's a zero marketing cost strategy. So is that how you got your first deal, was through agent?
No, it wasn't actually. I was doing that, but I felt like I wasn't. I don't know. I guess I wasn't probably putting in enough. I definitely wasn't putting in enough offers. So I decided to just buy a list and start with cold calling. Yep. I felt like I could just kind of do more volume at one time. So that would have been early 2023. So yeah, so beginning of this year in January, I bought like a 400 or 500 property list, and I was just calling them one by one on Google Voice. So that was kind of a tough period for me because I was talking to property owners, but I wasn't very confident, and I wasn't really getting much traction there. I went on a couple appointments, but yeah, that was where I almost gave up, I would say. I kind of hung it up for a couple months, and I was like, well, maybe I need more training, or maybe I didn't really know what I was doing wrong, but
but you got frustrated.
I definitely did. Yeah. So, I wasn't seeing any results.
Yeah.
But I was still listening to your videos every single day. A lot of your interviews, like you're doing with me now, is what kept me going. I would hear the stories of someone just kind of pushing through and kept going and finally got something. And that's really what kept me going. So
tell me why that was helpful hearing, because, I put out a lot of content, which is like, the 5 steps to this and that, but hearing me interview somebody do like their first deal, what was so inspiring about that?
The number one thing for me was hearing people who had been working on it for a really long time and not, giving up on it and finally getting their first deal. That was what kept inspiring me, because kind of, as the voice in my back of my head saying, I'm not really sure if this is possible. Like, these other guys can do it, but I don't really think I can do it. But then, you just hear kind of everyday people just like me, they would keep pushing through. And I knew like the other side of my head was saying, if you get enough reps, if you get enough dials, you'll get something. But it was really just hearing the folks who kept pushing through and finally got one. That's the number one thing that got me going.
Yeah, I think it's one thing when you're like, oh, sure, Jerry, you can do it. You've been doing it forever, but then when you see just someone starting out and you can relate to that person, you understand their pain, and then see them do it, it helps create some more confidence. That's
Absolutely.
Really cool. So then so that inspired you to keep going. And then how much further until you found the first deal?
Yeah. So that was my first list. That was about 500 properties, I believe. Then it was about June, I decided to buy a bigger list. So I bought about a 5,000 property list.
Okay.
Was absentee owner. And at that time I was like, okay, I need to really get a little more serious. So then I also bought a dialer. So then I was using just a dialer. But I wasn't going at it every single day. I was probably doing 3 days a week for 2 to 3 hours in the evenings. So, working through the list, still feeling a little discouraged because, lots and lots of no's, some getting cussed out and all of that. But finally I got to, the beginning of August, July 25th. Then, I had contacted a property owner probably at the beginning of July and been following up with her. And then finally on July 25th, we came to an agreement and I got my first contract. So it was a great feeling.
How many follow-ups did you have to do with that lead?
Let's see. I probably followed up with her 2 or 3 times before she would let me come out and look at the property. And then probably 2 or 3, maybe 4 times after.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think that finally got it over the edge was, I was kind of nervous and almost like asking her to give me the property. Like, if this works for you, I'd love to do this. And finally, I just kind of had the confidence to say, hey, this is where I'm at and I want to move forward. I'm ready to do it now. And, and it kind of just pushed me forward to kind of take the action of say, hey, let's do this now.
That sounds about right. I think statistics show that with like cold calling and texting and some outbound methods, it takes about 5 to 12 follow-ups and typically around 5-6 month, cycle from lead to close. So how long was it, do you think, from when your initial contact with her to closing? How long was that period?
Probably about a month, maybe.
Oh, so you did a lot of follow-up in a month.
Yeah, I was probably calling her every week.
Okay.
Yeah,
a month. 3 or 4 times, then you met her, then 3 or 4 more follow-ups, but that all transpired in about a month.
Yeah, maybe 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks.
But then how long after that to close?
To close took 6 weeks as well, because we ran into a few issues with the title. But yeah,
so
about 6 weeks.
You're probably 3 months from lead to closing, probably 3 or 4 months, would you say?
Yeah, right around there.
Okay. Yeah, which is good. I mean, that's if you can cycle through cold calling in 3 months, that's amazing. I'm really inspired to hear this though, because there's a lot of talk about cold calling and texting being really struggling, and they are struggling. There's no doubt about it. There's regulation, and there's a lot of the carriers are getting wiser on cold calling and texting. So, okay, so you got this contract, and then and how'd you come with your price? You just did your analysis and that felt like the right number, or what gave you confidence in your contract number?
Yeah, and I think that was maybe one of the problems that I was struggling with a lot of my other leads is I was really, really trying to dive deep into the ARV and comping, and I think I was being too conservative. But I used Zillow, and I used Redfin, and I used another property software, and kind of came up with an average. I did pull a lot of comps just off of Zillow and came up with an average. I actually have it right here. My ARV was like 245, which ended up being really way too low. Actually, I come to find out later. I'm sorry, 285 was my ARV that I came up
Okay.
with.
And you got the
Just based
contract
on-
at what price?
I got the contract at 100.
At 100. Okay.
Yeah.
So you get this at 100, and then what did you do to find your buyer?
So that's where the story gets pretty cool, I think, is actually I used, just as you were having the conversation earlier, I used your method directly to find my buyer of pulling out agents off of Zillow.
All right. Well, that line.
Yeah.
What did you time? What did you plan this with, Nathan? Nathan's doing a fist bumps up there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you started calling agents that represented flippers in the area.
Yep, exactly. I probably contacted, so within the first couple of days, I contacted at least 5 agents. I set up a showing with 3 of them. 3 of them came out. 2 of them brought buyers, and 1 was just agent by himself. The one agent came up by himself, was interested in it, and he wanted to purchase it. I thought that if I could get 150, I'd be doing really, really well. So he kind of talked me down, and he said he could do like 142 or 142.5. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, sure, because I was pretty nervous and I just wanted to get it done. Yeah. But he sent over his offer, and it was the full, state contract, realtor contract. And I was working with a title company at that point, and the owner of the title company was helping walk me through a few of the steps. And he said, definitely don't use that contract because it had all the typical contingencies in it as far as, inspection, financing, and all of that. So I was kind of trying to use my contract with him, and he kept pushing back. He didn't want to sign it. So then what I did is I called a couple more agents that had flips. I set up another showing, and one of the agents brought out 2 buyers with her. And what happened was they actually ended up kind of bidding each other up a bit. So so the guy that I actually went with, we ended up at 170. So I got the second contract at 170.
170.
Yeah.
170, so $70,000 assignment.
Yes.
Wow.
And Jerry, what's really cool is so the guy that I did the contract with, his name is Brett. So shout out to Brett. He's a follower of you as well. And his agent brought him to the property by his outreach to her. So he was doing agent outreach. Okay. So he had built that relationship with her. So when I contacted her, because I saw she had a flipped property that she had represented, she brought him, and then we ended up doing the deal together. And he was a wholesaler, so he assigned it to his end buyer.
What do you know for what?
175, I believe.
Okay, so he made 70. He made a quick 5.
Yeah. Man, I double closed it.
Oh, you did double close it.
Double closed it. Yeah.
And tell everybody why you decided to do that.
Well, I didn't really know this until I was working with the title company as well. But he told me, he said, anything over 30 to 40,000, he said you should definitely double close, just at the risk of possibly someone walking away. Yeah. If the buyer or the seller sees the numbers, they might be frustrated and end up just walking away. Yeah,
that's probably a fair statement. Okay, but Bryce, a $70,000 assignment on a cold call lead.
Yep.
An absentee owner, right? What did you say it was absentee owner?
Absentee owner. So it was a little bit interesting as well. So it was a 2-unit with a third non-conforming unit in the basement. So 3 total units. 2 of them were empty, but 1 was occupied. So I think that the owner had a little bit of trouble with the tenant. She kind of just wanted to get rid of it. It was in pretty rough shape. Probably needed about probably 100,000 to really make it high end or to get top value. I ended up paying the tenant to vacate, so I spent some money with her, and then I also paid for her moving costs as well. So that was some cost that came out of my pocket.
You had a few, but but still, that's probably wasn't much. A $70,000 assignment on your first deal, cold calling, and not only was it cold calling, but you did the cold calling. It wasn't even like you had to do it. You did the cold calling. Wow. Yeah. So tell me, what went through your mind when you did a $70,000 first deal? What was that like?
Well, it was pretty incredible. It was definitely disbelief, and I felt really, really good. Actually, I was going to ask you some questions about that as well if you had time, but I kind of went through a similar feeling with interview you had about 2 months ago. I believe his name was Dan Newen. So, I'm kind of in that phase now, but yeah, I would say the first 3 to 4 weeks I was on cloud 9, but now I'm kind of getting to that point as well, where it's like, well, what are the next steps? I'm a little bit doubtful if I can do it again. But yes, I definitely was. I mean, it's life changing. I feel, just to know that I was actually telling my girlfriend this, it's just really cool to know that you have the ability to go out and make money almost out of nothing, so if someone takes everything from you, your job, you at least have the skill to fall back on. I think that feeling is what makes me feel the best.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you learn how to do a wholesale transaction, I mean, for the rest of your life, you can dig your way out of any problem. You can create income, like it's literally that life changing. I hear a lot, this statement, like, it's just one deal, or all it takes is one deal, or one deal is life changing. I don't know that that's honestly true, because now what you have to prove to yourself is that you can repeat the process, right? So how do you create some consistency? Bye, sweetheart, love you. How do you create some consistency? How do you do it again and again on a monthly basis? That's really when you've figured out some consistency and you've got some sort of a business model in place. Now you'll constantly evolve with that and hopefully improve that, but until it's consistent, then it's like you started over again in a way. Exactly. And that's transacting in general. Every time you transact in real estate, you're out of business because you don't make any money until you do another deal. So how do we take this idea of transacting, even at a high level like you did, but how do we take that idea, that model, and create some processes, some systems so that we can rely on it on a consistent basis monthly? And so it's very developmental to go through the roller coaster, which you're experiencing. Like, that's normal. So first of all, don't feel bad about that. Like, that's part of the process for you. Your journey is going to be up and down. Some months a deal, some months not a deal. But really the focus should be, how do I build a business that does wholesaling, not how do I wholesale, or how do I create a business model that does deals, not how do I do a deal. And when you start to really focus on the business of real estate, not doing a deal, you'll really start to look at all the things you're doing much differently, because now it's about a process, and it's about how do I implement different channels to get certain results that I can consistently do on a monthly basis. I look at it like this. If you build a wholesale business the right way, it should generate, and this is, I think, just regular, like normal, you should be kicking out $100,000 a month in revenue from a wholesale business. Just a dialed in small team, not crazy or anything, $100,000 a month wholesale operation. And, wow. And that's, I mean, you would have to own hundreds of rentals to get the same cash flow as a normal wholesale operation. Mm-hmm. You'll never do it. And at least you won't do it in the same speed and time that you can do a wholesale business. You'll never get there with residential real estate, like single family residential. You're on track. So congratulations. Guys, leave a comment and say, Bryce, you're a flipping genius. So cool to do a $70K. My first wholesale deal was $6K. So like $70K is just, man, that's just nuts. It's awesome. So